Welcome to the Football Facilities for All workshop. Um, my name's Aidan Ainsley. I'm Facility and Investment Lead at Kent FA, responsible for improving facilities and helping clubs and organisations to apply for funding from the Football Foundation. So, in terms of what we're going to go through tonight, we're going to just give you a bit of a insight into the diversity and inclusion in Kent football, the facility barriers for underrepresented groups, some free and low cost solutions to making your site more accessible for people from underrepresented groups, um, and then also a bit of a look at an inclusive pavilion design, and then also some funding for facility developments as well. So, in terms of diversity and inclusion in Kent football, Kent FA recently launched a new diversity and inclusion action plan. Um, this is a document which essentially looks into the current profile of Kent football and sets out a set of actions over the next few years around how the county FA can help to diversify the game and ensure that it's really a game that's accessible for all in Kent. Um, so it includes a number of ambitions which are related to the profile of Kent FA staff and board, but critically the profile of our players, coaches, and referees as well. It's themed around 5 pillars, culture, leadership, communication and engagement, partnerships, and experience. Um, and yeah, in terms of culture, this is largely around developing the culture within the organisation to have a focus on how equality, diversity, and inclusion's embedded into everything that we do, but also how we create positive change to influence the wider football system in Kent. We know that we can't deliver it all on our own, and we're keen to develop our own culture and the same kind of breath try and develop the culture of those who are running football clubs in Kent, leagues in Kent, etc. to make sure it's as inclusive a game as possible. We know that in order to do that, the leadership's going to need to be right. So we need to look internally in that respect to ensure that we've got inclusive governance of the game. What's the profile and makeup of our staff, board, and the wider football workforce? Um, how trained are those individuals in terms of providing equal opportunity? And we're going to need to communicate that in the right way. So we need to be communicating to diverse communities. There's no point us trying to achieve things in terms of engaging people from diverse backgrounds without understanding their needs and requirements. Um, we're also going to need to provide information in various formats so that all of our information can be accessible to all. So this is a key piece of work and one that will underpin the success of all that we're able to achieve. In terms of partnerships, I mentioned that we're going to need to create stronger communication links with diverse communities. Um, in terms of the way that we're delivering our work, we're going to need to work in a far more partnership orientated way to ensure that we're really embedding those diverse communities into our project design to make sure it's fit for purpose when we're looking to engage people into our projects and programs. Um, and then in terms of the experience, so recruiting coaches, referees, volunteers into the football landscape in Kent, we're going to need to have a holistic approach to this. So we're going to need everyone to buy into trying to create the right experience for people from underrepresented groups in order to be successful in achieving that. So um, it's a real key pillar for us, and it's the diversity inclusion of the county sits as a priority action within our strategic action plan as well. So really something that we're taking seriously and that we will be looking to progress over the next few years. So we've got a bit of an insight here into the profile of Kent as a county in terms of the population. So you can see that we've split it out slightly in that we've got Kent, so the 13 local authorities, and then we've also got the profile of Kent, including the London boroughs of Bromley and Bexley. We've got a lot of clubs, and we've got leagues that affiliate to Kent FA that are in the Bromley and Bexley area. So it's important that they are included within this. And you can also see that there's actually a bit of um, a bit of a change when we get to the ethnic minority profile. So obviously being closer to London, Bromley and Bexley does create some additional diversity in that particular area. So yeah, something that we will need to factor into the way that we kind of work moving forwards. And this is the profile of people who are involved in the game in Kent. So you can see that in terms of females, with obviously 50% of the population being from a diverse background, from being female, we're quite far off in terms of 50% of the playing populace and the coaches and the referees being female. Um, you'll see the figures there in orange that shows our ambition and where we want to get to over the next few years. We know it's not going to change overnight, but and we're not necessarily going to get to 50% of females um, in the next 3 years, but we're certainly going to be hopefully making big strides to try and push that particular measure forward. Ethnic minorities, from a playing point of view, we're actually overachieving. So 19% of the playing of players in Kent are from a diverse ethnic background. Um, so we're still aiming to increase that. So we've put 20% as our ambition, but we are already bucking the trend from a player's perspective. Where we're lacking behind is in terms of coaches and referees. So there's still some work that we need to do in terms of that. We've also got information there around the LGBT community and how we're trying to progress the profile of those, and also those with disabilities as well there. So just looking at some of the facility barriers for people from underrepresented groups. So um, we know that a lot of particularly older style changing facilities that were built in the 60s, 70s were largely built without factoring females in. We know that um, the female game has not had the right level of support that it has in this day and age. And that facilities were largely built geared around the male game because that's largely who was allowed to play the game um, decades ago. So we've got quite a lot of work to do to try and get the facilities up to scratch. Um, we know that for ethnic communities, sometimes things like the visual inspiration around facilities can have an impact on how welcome they feel. Some will need to be able to see information that's up around facilities in alternative languages, for example. Religious groups, so some may or may not be able to attend football activity based on what facilities are available there for them to practice their religious or to engage in their religious practices. Um, the LGBT community may feel socially isolated if there's a lack of visual representation around facilities, if there's inadequate change in facilities. We know that for people with disabilities, change facilities again can be a real issue. But again, lack of visual inspiration can also be a problem. And then for new parents, this is probably one of the groups that's considered a little bit less when we're talking about underrepresented groups. But changing facilities for infants, that can be a bit of an issue if there isn't any on site or if they're only in the female toilets and not in the male toilets as well. Um, We know that people who are new parents will often have um, a second child, and some single parents might find it difficult to bring their older child to football whilst they've got their young infant if they've got nowhere to change them. So that can be a problem in terms of them and their children being able to access football too. So some of the free or low cost solutions. So um, we've broken this down into the different groups. So the first kind of slide just goes through the different um, solutions that are applicable to all. So general things, ensuring that the facility is clean seems like a basic one, but there's so many uh, changing pavilions that I go into, and I'm sure that you will all go into from time to time that aren't clean. Um, and this is something that affects absolutely everyone. Everyone prefers to go into a facility that's clean. Um, so prioritizing that is certainly something that's going to help make engaging in football more appealing. Ensuring toilet paper and hand wash is readily available in the toilets. As I said, particularly with pavilions where there's been largely just male usage, sometimes toilet paper is something that just gets forgotten, but needs to be and is obviously a critical priority for females, but should be for everyone. If the site's got imagery on the walls, ensuring that underrepresented groups are reflected in those pictures to make those individuals feel welcome is so key. Um, and then just things around the safety aspects. So when there's facilities that are being accessed late in the evening, particularly in those winter months when it's dark, is there any external lighting on the pathways towards the buildings to make that approach a little bit safer and make people feel more comfortable? Are there cameras up around the facility to prevent any antisocial behaviour? And then kind of looking at women and girls in like specifically, so things like sanitary products and disposable bins in which to put those sanitary products is again something that really gets overlooked, particularly on sites where there's not really been any female teams using it. Um, Having those in place will just make it a little bit easier for females to be able to utilize changing pavilions, and obviously those bins need to be emptied regularly. But then there's simple things you can do like scheduling training sessions earlier in the evening to ensure that it's more convenient and safe for females when there's maybe a little more light in the autumn and the spring. Or you could do all female training nights to create a much more comfortable environment for females. Scheduling equal access to the better pitches for match day. So some clubs will often have their first team pitch, which only gets used by the first team, or sometimes gets used by the reserves or the under 18s. But the club have also got a women's first team who don't get to use that same pitch. So in terms of giving equality of access, leveling that playing field, particularly when the men's first team and the women's first team will play on different days, should be something that every club is delivering equality on. And then in terms of capacity of grass pitches and increasing the quality of them, there's a lot of funding available now from the Football Foundation to be able to invest into pitches. The women's game is growing, and in order to be able to deal with that increased demand for facilities, improving the quality of pitches will increase the capacity and the number of games that can be played on the pitch each week. So that's really one to look at in terms of making your site more accessible for women and girls. When considering diverse communities, we've mentioned it a little bit before, but you could consider if any information around your facility needs to be provided in an alternative language. Um, so that might be signage or directions so that people know where they're meant to be going to access to the change rooms or to be able to get to the toilets, etc. You may have around your site, you may have people who are from other religious groups. They may need a space within your facility to be able to practice um, or observe a particular faith whilst on site. So, if you have a site that has a space that could be utilized in that way, it's worth considering it. I'd always recommend that you speak with those religious community groups in advance to kind of say what would you kind of need from a space if we were to create one, um, in terms of what size space and what they would need in it. And yeah, let them know that it's there and that you want them to engage in football at your site, and that you've kind of made that provision for them if that's required. The LGBT community. So we know that this can be a challenging one, but particularly for existing builds, can you consider how door signage can be amended to enable all genders to access the relevant toilets? Obviously, this is going to differ on a case by case basis, depending on what your facility looks like and what's there. But if you've got the capacity to do it, it's worth looking at and considering how you can adjust your site to make it accessible for people from the LGBT community. People with disabilities, I mean, a lot of this is stuff that people will kind of be a bit more aware of, but the key things in terms of ensuring corridors are free from blockages and equipment. Um, for people with visual impairments, considering contrasting colours for fixtures and walls so that people can kind of navigate their way around the facility a bit easier. And then providing designated car parking spaces for people with disabilities. There's nothing worse than the car park's full, but the person who arrives that's in a wheelchair has got to kind of access the site, navigating difficult pathways or having to park quite far away, and it just makes it off-putting for them to begin with. We've mentioned for new parents, so providing a baby changing unit within facilities, so you can get these for around £150. If there isn't a bespoke room or an accessible toilet in which these could be situated, then um, it would be good to install one in both the male and female toilets. You'll go to a lot of places these days, and there's only baby changing units in the female toilets, which, as a new dad myself, it's difficult and does make it challenging to then be able to take my son out and change him when I need to, if the provision's only in the female toilet. So that's certainly one to consider. So we're now just going to look at some pavilion design bits and pieces. So it's this particular site is an existing floor plan. So the site in question, they are proposing and have had planning permission, or they're applying for planning permission for a new pavilion to replace this one. Um, they've obviously realised that this site um, isn't the best it can possibly be to service sport. So the the site is a cricket and football site, so it gets used for both. So the FA and the ECB both commented on the planning application when it went in, and had a look at this existing design. So you can see that the changing rooms, for a start, the size of them are not FA or ECB compliant. So an FA compliant changing room is 16 square meters, and an ECB compliant one is 20. Um, there's no changing for match officials. Um, there's no accessible toilets. So we can see on the left hand side that there are um, some spectator toilets. There are cubicled, so in theory you could have one which is labelled male, one which is labelled female, or you could have males or females using both. Um, but it's probably not the ideal setup really in terms of them both being in that space and it's not accessible for people with disabilities. So not a great space to use at all. There's no baby changing facilities. We can see at the back here um, there's a staired entrance to be able to get into the club room. Um, Obviously, that's not going to be an accessible route for people with wheelchairs. There's very narrow corridors in the changing areas, which, if you consider, um, if there was a fire, for example, and this front entrance can't be, you're not able to get out via this front entrance. If the only option is to go through that area with the stairs, then it's obviously going to be difficult for a wheelchair user. If they're having to go through the corridor here, again, this could be difficult because the corridor is so narrow. So um, that's something to be considered as well. Um, in terms of the toilet, so we can see that there's 4 urinals there. No, it's not really set up for females to be able to use. Probably the worst aspect of this particular design is that in order to access the showers, you have to go through the toilets, of which the toilets are effectively male toilets. So it really doesn't, it's not really set up very well for females to be able to use. It's a communal shower block, which again, the preference now and the recommendations from NGBs is to have cubicle showers, just to give that bit of privacy to people when they are when they are having showers. There's also windows into the changing rooms and also the showers themselves as well. Um, I've not visited this site. They may have frosting on the windows, but it is something that we would respond to when a planning application came in if we could see that there were windows into the changing areas and advise that either the windows were frosted, um, or that there was suitable covering so that if you could see out, you couldn't see in to the into those spaces. So that's just highlighting the different items that I've just mentioned there. So this is the initial proposed floor plan. So we can see that obviously we've now got 4 changing rooms. We've got an officials room, or 2 officials rooms, but there are still a couple of problems with this design. So the angle of the changing room lobby doors. So we've got 2 doorways into the change room, which is good practice. The angle's not the most ideal. If you're stood in this hallway, you can likely see um, straight into quite a high portion of the change room if you're stood at the right angle and both doors are open. The recommendation is to have doors that are directly one after the other in order to get in, or to have a privacy screen angled in a way that means that when you then enter, you can't see into the changing area. You'll notice that on this, the bottom 2 changing rooms, there's cubicle showers, which is great to see, but one of the cubicles has got 2 shower heads in one cubicle. I'm sure, unless you're a husband and wife, you probably don't fancy sharing a small cubicle with one other person whilst you're showering. So, um, so that's a recommendation that we would take out. We've still got windows into the changing rooms here at the bottom, as you can see. From a cricket perspective, the recommendation is to have a window out onto the cricket pitch. So that's why that's still in that design. What we would recommend from an FA point of view is that either a blind is installed onto that window so that when it's been used for changing, the blind can be pulled down, or that there's coverings on the window that mean that you can see out but you can't see in, to ensure that when cricket Bats, men or women, are in the changing rooms and watching their fellow Bats people out playing, they can use that window for viewing the game, but whilst they're actually getting changed, they can have that privacy that they need as well. So some of the real positives of this new design. So I've mentioned the accessible spectator toilet. So that's in here. Doesn't really show if there's baby changing, but being a disabled toilet and the space that's provisioned in there, that is something that could be considered for inclusion in there. There's a lift for wheelchair users and prams to be able to get up to the second floor. We've got these really wide corridors, which is good. Double doorways to be able to get in here. We're not sure if they're power assisted doors, but that's possibly another recommendation that we would add in. We've got step-free access to every part of the ground floor. We've got cubicled showers within the changing rooms, which we mentioned already, and the two match officials rooms. And then we've also got designated male and female spectator toilets as well. So a lot better in terms of the design. After we fed back on those recommendations, the organisation then submitted some new plans, and these were those new plans. So the slight changes that are on this is the two change rooms at the top are slightly bigger, so they're 20 square meters, so that they are also ECB compliant for a cricket point of view, so they can have 4 teams using those changing rooms. The windows are still there, and we've kind of mentioned what our recommendation for that was. We've now also got better angled doorways into the changing rooms to prevent as much or likelihood of sight into the changing rooms whilst they're being used. And in those front changing rooms, the cubicle that had 2 shower heads has been reduced to just 1 shower head in each cubicle. So just to kind of, I guess, yeah, wrap that kind of section up. So changing rooms with privacy screens or lobbies at entrances is a key one to include. Frosted or opaque glass windows, interchanging spaces. What I haven't mentioned is if you've got a single story changing facility with a flat roof, which has a skylight into the changing rooms, it's worth making sure that that one's also frosted or opaque as well, as someone may be able to get onto the roof and peer into the space via the skylight. Step-free access into entrances and wide corridors. Power operated doors and lifts if you've got a multiple floor site. If it's a new build, then building close to the road or nearby housing will mean that you've got a safer and more welcoming approach to the building. And it's key to also, if you can, put in even pathways for wheelchair users. And where possible, accessible all gender toilets with baby changing facilities included. And then the kind of icing on top really is if you've got imagery around the building, just making sure that you've got various different underrepresented communities included within that imagery to make them feel as welcome as possible when they're in and around your facilities. So in terms of funding, so looking at funding to refurbish a pavilion, so the Football Foundation will fund 75% of the cost of your project, up to a maximum of £25,000, and that's within their small grant scheme. So the first step, if you want to progress a project like that, is to speak to us at the County FA, specifically myself. Generally, we'll come to site and have a look at the building and give some recommendations around what you might need to look at in terms of your project. What you will need is security of tenure. So that will be in the form of either the freehold or at least a 5-year lease for the site. You might have a situation where the applicant isn't actually yourselves as a club, it's the parish council, for example. They would be eligible to apply for the funding and undertake the project. They would just need to reference that a football club is using the site. Um, you'd need to provide a condition survey, which would give a bit of an insight into what the current condition for the building is, what the recommended works would be. This is really handy if it can be coupled with photographs of the building as well to really bring that survey to life, if that it's not already included in the survey report. We need drawings of the existing floor plan and also the proposed floor plan if you're looking to knock down walls and change the configuration. We need a specification and schedule of the works and what those costs will be. You'll then need two like-for-like quotes and planning approval. So in terms of that planning approval, there may be some amendments you're looking to do to your project which don't require planning permission, in which case you'll still need to approach your local authority to find to get them to give you confirmation that you don't need planning approval, because you'll need to upload that either planning approval or evidence that you don't need planning approval when you're submitting your application. You'll likely need building regulations. You can go on the government website to find out if your project would require building regulations, and there's all the information on there as well around how to gain building regulations as well. And finally, you'll need buildings and contents insurance and be able to evidence that you've got that. For funding for new builds, so major pavilion projects generally need to be identified as a priority project in the local football facilities plan. So each local authority has got a local football facility plan. They're currently being refreshed this season. So by June, there should be a 2025 version for every local authority in the country. Grant requests of up to £100,000 would require a 10-year lease or the freehold. You'll also need to evidence that the project will ensure equal access for women and girls, be able to show that your program of use and evidence how the project will enable the facility to be used during the weekday when it's not used for football. You'll need to be able to evidence how it would increase revenue into your organisation and how you'll then reinvest that into your pitches. Critically, you'll need to do more extensive community engagement. So, who are the people around your site that could be potential users of it, both from a football point of view, from an alternative sport point of view, or even outside of sports? It could be that you're proposing some additional changing rooms and a club room, and when the club room's not being used for football, it'll be used by a local nursery, or it'll be used by a Zumba group, or any kind of different uses that can make it a site that doesn't sit there empty Monday to Friday, but then get used on the weekend. We really need these facilities to be contributing beyond football and sport where possible. And then finally, in terms of alternative funding opportunities, so the Kent FA Foundation, which is our charitable arm, has a strategic grant of up to £5,000. So often this fund is used as partnership funding towards unlocking other funding, rather than your whole project being a £5,000 one, but it is there and able to be applied for. Active Kent and Medway, who are the county sport partner, they've got a capital grant scheme, which is up to £5,000, and again that carries a bit of a similar purpose in terms of unlocking broader funding beyond that. Kent Community Foundation, you can apply for up to £6,000 from them. The National Lottery Community Fund, you can access up to 10,000 from them. The Queen's Platinum Jubilee Activity Fund's got up to £10,000 in, and then Cash for Clubs up to £5,000 as well. So, in terms of trying to access bigger funding for bigger projects, and this is probably more pertinent to new builds, the key kind of avenue to explore really is house and developer contributions. So that's Section 106 or Community Infrastructure Levy funding from local authorities. So there's not a specific amount of funding that you can unlock from these, but if you've got housing that's in your particular area, there could be some Section 106 that's been allocated towards it. First port of call really is to speak to your local authority to try and find out if there's any projects that haven't been allocated funding yet. The difference with Section 106 and Community Infrastructure Levy is Section 106 is allocated to specific projects at the point of which the developers are given planning permission and approved. Community Infrastructure Levy funding is where the developer contributes into a pot and the fund is not necessarily allocated to a project yet, but the local authority can dip into it when they feel the need is right to then allocate a portion of it to a project. So yeah, first kind of port of call is speaking to local authority to see if they've got anything that can be contributed to the project. So in terms of next steps, so I will send these slides around so that everyone's got these to look at again, but really, where possible, implement the low cost and free solutions. If you're looking at something a bit bigger, then get in touch if you've got a refurbishment project that you want to discuss or a new build project. And yeah, we'll be happy to look at where we can support. So I will send these slides around. We've this season developed a Facilities for All guidance document as well, so I'll attach that as well, so you've got that moving forwards. If you've got any questions after kind of watching this, just let us know and we'll be kind of happy to support as best we can. And yeah, fingers crossed we can help you to develop some really great facilities for everyone to be able to use. So if there's no other kind of thoughts, then we'll close it there. Thanks very much for attending, and I hope you found it really useful, and look forward to catching up with you all soon. Take care. Bye bye.